Dobbs drops back, fires long for the end zone. The pass is going to be caught by Tennessee. By Tennessee, Jawan Jennings. What a turn of events.
Give him 6.
To the checkerboards. Touchdown, Tennessee.
Rock Solid Sports, the only show with a home field advantage for UT Athletics. Here's tonight's host.
Hello and welcome into the Wednesday night edition of WTK's Rock Solid Sports. I'm your host, Dominic Wade Throngard, all the way from Boise, Idaho, joining you on this lovely Knoxville evening. A little stormy out tonight, some interesting rain in the clouds. Should have Griffin joining me shortly on the stream. But for now, you're just kicking it with me. And of course, as always, I like to enter to the tune of Tupac. But first segment first, let's get right into it while we wait for Griffin to hop on board. SEC Media Days have been going on this past week. It's been really fun to see just the new reaction to the new members of the conference. Oklahoma and Texas, they are officially here, and they've been present at Media Days. And to symbolize these new fellas in the conference, Media Days are in Dallas this year. Interesting turn of events there. Not so used to that when you think of the Southeastern Conference, but lo and behold, times are changing. Money's in the game now. So Josh Heupel, already extremely confident in his team. He's been quoted as saying, we've got, without a doubt, the best, the deepest roster that we've had. We've had to navigate some really unique circumstances, but we've never given ourselves an out. But we're at the best point that we've been, and it's not even close. Oh, and we got Griffin now. There we go. Hello and welcome, Griffin. How you doing?
What's up, Dom? Doing well. Can you hear me?
Can't quite hear you.
All right, I'll figure it out.
I got to turn you on. That's what I got to do. Go ahead now.
How about now? Can you hear me, Dom?
I'm still not hearing you. Oh, I know what I need to do. Forgive us while we navigate these brief technical difficulties. Just one little thing. It's going to be kind of funny while I take care of this, if I can. We're still here. We're still hanging out. All right, and now we should be able to hear Griffin. I might have to adjust things on the stream real quick. Forgive me while I set this up. It's, of course, always the most fun thing to do. Oh, I think I hear you now, Griffin.
You got me now?
Yes, sir. There we go.
Well, perfect. I heard that you were talking about Josh Heupel, and that is awesome to hear, knowing that the SEC Media Days have been kicking off, and it's been a blast just following along because it is officially talking season. College football is right around the corner. It doesn't get much exciting than this, except when we actually do get to that weekend where everything gets going.
Absolutely. And I was just talking about some of the Josh Heupel quotes and the team quotes from this SEC Media Days that has been going on. Heupel's been extremely high on this team, saying they're at the best point they've been. It's not even close. Keenan Peely said, we're different, man. The way we work in the offseason, we've got a lot of competitive dudes in the locker room, dudes who are willing to sacrifice for their brothers. I feel like that's the big difference this year is the camaraderie that we have, willing to sacrifice for one common goal. And so with that, I'm just wondering, the vibe seems super high at Media Days, and it seems like the Vols are clear that they're at the top of the game. How are we feeling about that?
I feel good about it, and I think that overall you can only look so much into your team from January to July, because when you think about it, the team necessarily hasn't had any real conference or real action against another school. That's why I think an orange and white game or a spring game against another school would be a lot of fun. Like, could be the same rules where it's a little low key, but I think it would be cool because you really don't know that much until you kick off week 1, week 2, week 3, and you start finding your identity. However, I love how positive that Cooper Mays, Keenan Peely, Omari Thomas, and of course, Coach Heupel have talked about this team, talked about their roster, and they've kind of praised their squad in the amount of hard work and the amount of camaraderie they've been able to accomplish over the offseason. And I think a lot of good momentum can be built, and really the needle can be moved in the offseason. And you'd hope that with this new look roster, and Josh Heupel's talked about that at multiple spots on the roster, this is the deepest position groups he's had since being on the campus at the University of Tennessee. So that excites me. That encourages me heading into the year. And obviously, like I said before, I think it just comes down to how ready, how prepared will this team be come week 1, and to be honest, come week 4 when they face off against the Oklahoma Sooners.
That's definitely the big question mark, is how will they fare against the Sooners? But like you said, college football is one of the sports that you truly don't know what it's going to be like until that first kickoff. And every year we get surprises that no one saw coming. It's always a different product each season, and preseason, it means nothing in college football, less than any other sport, I would argue. And Josh Heupel, he also talked briefly about Oklahoma taking the questions seriously for the first time, because he did joke back in, I believe it was May, saying that he didn't know they had a game against Oklahoma. But said that he's excited to go back to Norman, going to be playing a lot of guys that he knows, like former players on the coaching staff. Should be a really exciting time. And how do you think that Josh Heupel himself is going to react to that coaching challenge of going back to your alma mater?
I don't know if it's a coaching challenge, but I think it's a personal challenge. I think it's you are an alumni. You are a former player who won a national championship, who did amazing things in Norman. And so if anything, I think it's the attitude and the memories and nostalgia that he has with that program. But I also think Josh Heupel is a confident guy, and he was a top tier quarterback in college football. And so, to be honest, I think he's going to want to beat him even more because of all those things, because that's kind of how Josh Heupel rolls. Is he said it at SEC Media Days. He's always confident. He believes in his guys. And I think he's a very motivated, driven individual. Most quarterbacks are, and they don't really lose that after they stop playing the game, especially if they get into coaching. And so, like I said before about the season, I feel encouraged about that matchup against Oklahoma, specifically because I think Josh Heupel is going to be ready to go, and I think he's going to be excited to face off against his alma mater.
I'm inclined to agree. Heupel, throughout his tenure, has proven that he's a big-time competitor, and the bigger the moment, the more Heupel wants to show up. We saw at the Bama game. I mean, that is the perhaps biggest stage he could have had, and he answered the call just fine with confident play calling throughout that matchup. But emotionally, it's going to be really weird for him. I can't imagine being in his shoes and sort of, going back 20 years later and walking on that field in another team's gear. It's got to feel really weird, because when you graduate your college, that's a sense of pride that you never truly lose. And so I'm sure there's still a part of him that's a little bit sooner, but it's going to be a moral conflict for him a little bit, but I think he'll respond just fine. And I think that his guys will be even more motivated to go out there and get the win, because Josh Heupel's used to winning in Norman. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
That's a great point. And I agree with you that this game specifically is going to matter big time for Coach Hype emotionally, for Tennessee emotionally, for their coach, but also just in the fact that winning your first game in SEC play is going to matter, because in this iteration of college football playoff, Tennessee has a great chance to get in if you win a lot of SEC games. And winning a lot of SEC games is no easy task. So it feels really good to get the first one. And so I'm sure both Oklahoma and Tennessee are going to be doing everything they can to get that first one. And Brett Venables at Oklahoma just got that big contract extension. They got a quarterback in Jackson Arnold who's coming back. And so I'm very interested to see how Tennessee responds to that home crowd in their first ever SEC game as a home team. And so there's going to be a lot of energy in that place. Can Tennessee, control the narrative with a young quarterback, with an explosive defense, the most explosive defense that Heupel's had, especially up front? I think there's a lot of fun storylines that will go into that game.
Most definitely. And I think the biggest question marks in that game are probably going to be around Nico, just because that is his first true road test. I mean, there's the game against NC State, but still the talent gap between NC State and us, it's pretty massive. And if we manage to slip up there, that says that bodes a lot worse than even being able to talk about this game. But with Nico going into a hostile environment, that's going to give us our first look at how he reacts under pressure to an opposing team's crowd. Because while he did play in the Citrus Bowl, it was not a hostile environment at all. It was a big game, and that was a big win for us, and he played phenomenally. But it's not the same as going to the Palace on the Prairie in their first SEC matchup ever at home. It's unreal. I mean, that place will be off the chain. But moving on a little bit, going down south to the cousins of those Oklahoma Sooners, there's a lot of questions about the horns down gesture at media days. And, Texas, they're not too happy about people doing horns down. They basically made it illegal to do in the Big 12. The official statement on it, officials coordinator John McDade said, "We're going to read the context in which it's done. I ask my officials to use the judgment of, is it taunting an opponent? Is it making a travesty of the game? Or is it otherwise affecting our ability to manage the game?" And he gave an example to elaborate on that, saying, if the player tackles a player and stands over him and gives the gesture, then we've got taunting. Then we've got unsportsmanlike conduct. So that implies that there's context in which players can do it, and it's not going to be penalized. How are we feeling about that one?
I like it, and I'm not surprised by any means, because it's the SEC. It's like the most athletic conference. It's the conference with the most professional players. It's the conference with the most total stadium and game day atmospheres that teams worry about. And it's also the conference with probably the most intensity. Obviously, there's intensity at lots of Big 10 schools, several Big 12 schools, ACC schools, couple out west. It doesn't matter, because the SEC is just different in terms of the intensity and competitiveness. And I'm not surprised that the horns down signal is going to be A-okay in certain situations. What the official, the head of the officials for the SEC said was that if the acting question was done at a supermarket, is it okay? And usually if you stand over a guy and do it, that's probably going to be an issue if you're at your local Walmart. However, if you do horns down after you score a touchdown, or you do horns down after you get a first down, or you do horns down on the bench, or guys on the bench are doing horns down, that's just fine. And that's the friendly fire that I love about the SEC. And I'm very happy that the SEC didn't cave to one of the biggest brands in college athletics.
Absolutely. And I think it's just more indicative of the conference's stance on Texas, because the Big 12, that was Texas's conference. They could do anything they wanted in that league, and they could change anything they wanted about it. Just with the Longhorn Network and how much that truly changed college athletics in general. Texas, they're no longer the big fish in the small pond. Oklahoma's got a great brand too. Nothing compared to Texas, just because, to be perfectly honest, there's not a lot of people in Oklahoma, so they can't have as big of a brand because their footprint is not as large. But there's a lot of people in Texas, a lot of people that love that Longhorns team. And so I think this just dictates that, there's other big brands in the SEC, and no school is higher than Greg Sankey himself. No school is higher than the conference. And that's what I think makes the SEC so unique in college athletics right now, is it has this position where it can act like this, whereas other conferences, they can't enforce their authority. I mean, the Pac-12 tried to exercise some authority. They no longer exist. The Big 12, they were under the control of Texas. And then once they finally started acting on their own, when Texas left and getting all these schools that Texas would have said no to, they're looking good now. So it's interesting to see the dynamics of conference switch up, but I'm very excited about seeing players do the horns down. I think it just adds fuel to the fire of some already great rivalries, and I'm really looking forward to Texas A&M.
Yeah, I think you said that very well in regards to the SEC as a whole. Because listening to SEC Media Days, there's been so many great points of supporting Commissioner Sankey and how the SEC is moving forward in a very positive manner. A big example of Lane Kiffin, when he came to the stand, he got a question from a media member saying, is your schedule harder now? Is this going to make the league harder now? And he had a fantastic, mature answer, surprisingly. And Lane Kiffin has really shifted, I think, over the last couple of years. And he said, for every action, it can go both ways. There's a positive and a negative, and it doesn't matter. And he said the way that Texas and Oklahoma can help the SEC is huge. It financially helps every school. It brings the fact that the SEC, if it was arguably the best conference, it is 100% the best conference now. And I think that was a really good point, just thinking about that. The SEC uses its members to advance the conference further and still become the dominant conference across all of the different sports. And Dom, I think you made an interesting point talking about Texas being the big fish in the smaller pond in the Big 12. Well, I think of the SEC kind of like the ocean of college athletics, and it's just a whole bunch of sharks. There's no fish, there's no pond. The SEC is the Great Lakes, right? Is an ocean, and there's just a whole bunch of sharks. They're all predators out there. And
well, there is Vanderbilt.
There is Vanderbilt. You are right. But I would say for the most part, there's 10 to 12 sharks in this arena, in this conference at all times, in all sports, which makes it very hard to win in any sport. And it makes it very interesting for the fans. And it provides a great product, but it also moves the conference forward year after year, and bringing in big brands to pair with more big brands is just going to, I think, pay off the more and more I think about it. Because I think at first people were really upset about Texas and Oklahoma joining. It was taking away from the true SEC. They're not South, they're not East. But the more and more I think about it, with 16 teams eliminating divisions, I think this iteration of the SEC could really, really cement the Southeastern Conference as the place to be. And Sankey said he's going to focus on these 16. So I know there's conference realignment going on. It seems like this iteration of the SEC could really drive college athletics in the right direction.
I agree entirely. And I think that I understand people being upset at the SEC making these additions. And initially, I hated it too, but it's a product of everything that's happened in college athletics with just the money in the sport, NIL, all of that is a culmination of things that it's been dominoes falling since the 80s, since scandals before our time. And so just as time has ticked on, this sort of thing has been inevitable, where there's going to be these super conferences. And I think the SEC was they acted first, which helped them out significantly, doing the preemptive strike to getting both those teams, changed the dynamic entirely, and put them at the forefront of college athletics as leaders and innovators. And everyone followed suit after. We saw USC, UCLA leave for the Big Ten, and that still doesn't make a ton of sense. They're adding a lot of money to that conference, but they're watering down the product to an extent, and the travel costs are pretty massive. So I think with the SEC, they've done it right in the sense that it's still in the geographic footprint. I mean, they both border SEC states. And I mean, Texas already was an SEC state if we count the Aggies. But I think that the way Sankey has done it, and the way he's shutting the door on schools that have proved unruly in their conferences like Clemson and Florida State, I think it's really smart. But yeah, moving on from that, other topics at the SEC Media Days. Nick Saban has also been working as an analyst for ESPN now, and he remarked while covering the event, I thought this was interesting. I also got to the point where it was difficult for me to sustain things the way I needed to sustain them to be satisfied with myself that I was doing a good job. So last year was hard. I said maybe it's time for somebody else, and I don't regret that. And so Nick Saban, I think he's happy in retirement, but this puts Alabama in such an interesting position. And seeing them at media days now, it's bizarre that Nick Saban is not up there taking the stand for them. And they sit in a super interesting position with DeBoer. They have all the resources in the world still. But how do we feel about how Bama sits at this exact moment in time?
It's a great question. I think it is one of the best questions and talking points, as it is talking season, heading into the SEC season. And I think it's revolving around the fact that Alabama isn't automatically a tier 1 SEC football school this year. They're going to have to work for it. I'm not saying they can't be that. I think they are projected to be the second or third best team in the SEC, and I think they can be. However, it's not going to be easy, and there could be growing pains for Kalen DeBoer, but that fan base is going to want wins immediately, and that's not always how it goes with new coaches and roster turnover. And so I'm very interested to see how it all shakes out. I think this Alabama team could be really good. I think Kalen DeBoer is a really good coach. To be honest, I think he's one of the most likable guys in the SEC after watching video of Kalen and just seeing that he's from South Dakota. He's a good dude. He does it the right way. And I just think that Alabama might have some growing pains, and I'm very interested to see how they do with a turnover of staff, because I know Nick Saban is still super involved. He is. He's still in Tuscaloosa. However, I think it's going to be a new look program, if you will, and I'm interested to see how Alabama fares against these other schools who used to not mess around with Alabama because Nick Saban was, that kingpin of really SEC football. Well, Kirby Smart took over a couple years ago. Nick Saban couldn't really hang anymore. NIL gets in the way. Nick Saban retires, and now Alabama has to figure it out again. And I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple of years Alabama has one off year that's not too good, because the rest of these SEC schools are getting just as good as Alabama, and they're really going to have to fight hard every single week if they want to sustain where they were, because I don't really know if it's possible.
I don't know if it's possible either. I think that Alabama in this interesting spot, like you said, DeBoer is actually a pretty likable guy, but that's exactly why I don't think he's a good fit for Alabama. If I'm being perfectly honest, I think if you're the head coach of Alabama, everyone should hate you. And if we're seeing a likable Bama coach, to me, it sends the message that the school is just not as intimidating anymore. Nick Saban was not a rude guy by any means, but he was stern. And he was stern in all of his interviews, and he started to soften up towards the end of his career. And he's a likable media personality now, but he was always stern, he was always serious, and he had an aura about him that you did not mess with Alabama, you did not mess with Nick Saban. And that no longer exists at Alabama, and there's not that same presence that existed. And that's honestly a huge part of a coach's job, is to create that culture, create that presence. And when you have the brand of Alabama, sustaining that is huge. I mean, we see a team like Ohio State has all the resources of Alabama, has all the same talent, yet they never got to that level. They haven't dominated. And it's because you have a coach like Ryan Day who's not creating that intimidation factor. He doesn't possess that capability to command and lead that you saw intrinsically in Nick Saban. DeBoer, I think, has the ability to lead, but I think DeBoer is the leader of an underdog team. He reminds me a little bit more of Josh Heupel, and Heupel's a perfect fit here because Tennessee's always had a chip on their shoulder, and they're always going to play with a chip on their shoulder, especially just the Appalachian region. It fits like a glove. But a school like Alabama that's as pristine, I don't know if I see it working out so well.
I think that's a totally fair point. And I don't think DeBoer will necessarily struggle. I really do think he's a great football coach, and I think he's got the track record to show it. It might be small, but he coached for a really good Washington team and did not lose a whole lot of games. In all of his time as a head coach, he doesn't really lose football games. And so it's almost like he's similar to the Kim Caldwell hire from Danny White, where their experience as head coach is a little bit smaller, but they have a lot of wins. And when they do coach, they win a lot of games. And so I'm interested to see. I mean, DeBoer just made it to the national championship game with Washington. If he can have SEC resources and the most resources in the country pretty much at Alabama in Tuscaloosa, I think he could still have success. But I do agree. I like your point about that intimidation factor because it's not necessarily the same as it was. I know I wasn't a huge fan of Nick Saban, the coach, when he was playing the Tennessee Volunteers, but Nick Saban, the analyst, is growing on me. He's got a quick, dry sense of humor. He's been a blast to listen to, and the dude knows his stuff. He knows the game pretty much better than anybody else. And so it's a lot of fun to listen to the way he breaks it down on TV, but it also brings me back to he was successful for a reason because he really knew what he's talking about. And so replacing the GOAT is no easy task, whichever way you slice it. And that's the tall task that Kalen DeBoer has in Tuscaloosa.
Truly. And I do like what you said about Saban. I love him as an analyst. I can't lie. He's funny and he explains the game extremely well. It's not just that he knows ball. He knows how to explain it to a larger audience. And I think that shows just his level of talent when he was coaching, because a lot of these players are coming from small high schools and they may be the most talented player on their team, but they don't know an Alabama pro style offense. And so it shows that he's able to explain these things in great detail in ways that make sense to people, which adds to your ability as a coach. But yeah, DeBoer does know how to win games, and that cannot be ignored. But this new look SEC, it adds another challenge of every single game in the conference is going to be a grind. And in that former Pac-12, this was one of the Pac-12's best years, no doubt about it. But it was not the same level of competition week in, week out. I know DeBoer can win big games against big teams, but can he do it week in, week out? It remains to be seen. And that's the whole other issue of this new look conference, is the conference has gotten tougher. But with the degree of difficulty, it might just end up adding more playoff spots to us. But with that, got to take our first break. We got some MLB talk on the other side. Stay tuned. You're listening to Volunteer Radio, WUTK 90.3, The Rock.
90.3 The Rock thanks the UT Athletic Department for their support. The 2024 football Vols will play home games inside Neyland Stadium against SEC rivals Florida, Alabama, Kentucky, and others. Allvols.com for info, with a link at WUTKRadio.com. UT student ticket info is at bigorangetickets.utk.edu. 90.3 The Rock says, go Vols.
Support for WUTK comes from Fieldhouse Social, the modern sports bar next to campus at University Commons. Fieldhouse Social serves American craft fare such as burgers, wings, and more with high tops around the bar, a separate dining area, and a center lounge with leather chairs and couches in front of their 23-foot LED TV wall for Tennessee and pro sports. Fieldhouse Social has an outdoor patio with trivia twice a week and sponsors Wednesday's Rock Solid Sports. FieldhouseSocial.com.
WUTK thanks the UT Athletic Department and the Lady Vols basketball program for their support. And we wish first-year head coach Kim Caldwell and the team good luck for the 2024-25 season. Lady Vols basketball season tickets are on sale now with home games against Kentucky, Vandy, Georgia, and others. Student ticket info is at bigorangetickets.utk.edu. That's TIX. General public tickets, including season tickets, are at allvols.com.
Tired of hearing that same pop rock song corporate radio claims to be new music? Then step inside 90.3 The Rock.
Come on in.
90.3 The Rock, the Delta House of Radio.
Volunteer Radio receives support from Tennessee Smokies Baseball, AA Southern League affiliate of the Chicago Cubs, whose 2024 regular season schedule features 6-game homestands, Tuesday through Sundays, now into September at Smoky Stadium in Kodak. WUTK's Rock Solid Sports will have weekly Smokies updates. TheSmokiesBaseball.com, and a link is at WUTKRadio.com. The Rock receives support from Union Place Bar and Grill and Beer. Food made from scratch with local ingredients whenever possible. Union Place offers wings, sandwiches, and salads 7 days a week. UnionPlaceBar.com and Union Place Bar on Instagram and Facebook. This must be the place.
Welcome back into the Wednesday night edition of WTK's Rock Solid Sports. I'm your host, Dom. I'm joined alongside Griffin on StreamYard. Got some MLB stuff to talk about. Of course, All-Star festivities have come to a close. Plenty of exciting moments in the All-Star week with Paul Skeens pitching a scoreless first inning as the rookie started for the National League, marking the first rookie start in an All-Star game since the Dodger Hideo Nomo in '95. AL, however, went on to win in a 5-3 affair with Boston's Jarren Duran, hitting a 2-run blast in the fifth to seal the deal. Shohei also delivered on promises, hit a 400-foot bomb to give the NL their only runs. And, of course, home run derby, Dodgers to Oscar Hernandez won. And the real story, for better or for worse, was the national anthem. And I got to know, does this officially take the cake as the worst national anthem ever in your eyes?
It does not. It does not. And I have had this debate with a couple people in the last several days. And if you're watching the stream, we appreciate you supporting the station. After this show, if you have not seen the Home Run Derby national anthem, go look it up. Ingrid Andress. It is a must-see national anthem because it rivals Fergie's from the NBA All-Star Game. This is the second worst national anthem that I've ever heard, Dom. I think that Fergie still takes the cake because she was like trying really hard and it didn't work out. And I know the video of Draymond Green and Klay Thompson like giggling, like it's so fun to watch. I had to watch Chris Stapleton's national anthem from the Eagles Chiefs Super Bowl afterwards to cleanse because it was that bad. And Ingrid Andress, a crazy post after the national anthem, said she was checking herself into rehab and all of that as well. But anyway, pretty crazy experience there before the Home Run Derby got going. And then obviously last night, Cody Johnson redeemed himself or redeemed the MLB, putting on a show, a great national anthem for the Texas homer there before the All-Star game. But yeah, it was pretty unbelievable, Dom. What's your take?
My take is pretty much the same. I still got to stick with the Fergie one because Fergie was trying to do some interesting things with the anthem. The anthem's pretty cut and dry, and everybody sings it pretty close to the same way. I don't know what Fergie was trying to do. Ingrid Andress, however, she was trying to do it the normal way, but it wasn't quite happening. Checked herself into rehab after, though. I wish her all the best with that. But, I mean, if there's a way to go out and go into rehab, I guess the last thing to do it would be to drunkenly sing the national anthem at the Home Run Derby. But, yeah, very fun All-Star weekend or All-Star week for the MLB. It's weird timing. They don't really do it on the weekend, which interesting for other sports. But, yeah, a really fun All-Star week, and just the MLB season has really gotten underway, and it's become pretty exciting for the average sports fan as well. I feel like the MLB is starting to get a lot more engagement once again, just also coming out of college baseball. I mean, the Vols, I saw a tweet not too long ago that said we have over 40 active players on MLB rosters. Not necessarily playing in the MLB, but just rostered as part of organizations, which is insane.
It's awesome, and it's really cool to see the trajectory. 40 out of the 41 that are on active rosters played for Tony Vitello. One of them played in the All-Star game last night in Garrett Crochet, and he leads the MLB in strikeouts. So that dude is a baller, known, just ace pitcher for the Chicago White Sox. And it's fun because you see guys like Paul Skeens start in the All-Star game. He played for national championship 13 months ago. It is just absurd to see Skeens in the MLB right now, starting in the All-Star game, absolutely shoving, and it's fun to watch. It wasn't fun to watch last year when he was playing Tennessee, but it sure is fun to watch now, and it gives me hope that he was playing alongside some of these Tennessee Vols that are now being drafted or in the minors or being brought up, like Trey Lipscomb, Jordan Beck, Ben Joyce. Lots of these guys getting their chances, and I think a lot of them are going to pan out as really, really good players at the next level. That's the exciting part, and so I am very hopeful that those guys get up to the majors, and I think there will be more guys to come as well from this Tennessee baseball program. It is really exciting, and I agree with you, Dom. I think the MLB is attracting the general sports audience this time of year. One, because nothing else is really on, but two, because of the product and the stars that are in the league right now. I think we noticed that in the All-Star game last night. Shohei Ohtani, obviously a big attention grabber, launched a 400-foot home run that was just, pured into right field. It was just put on a rope. It was, I got out of my seat when he hit that home run. And then there's other guys like Paul Skeens and like Garrett Crochet who are just, they have a way with the baseball on the mound, and it's so fun to watch. And I like that the MLB is, attracting a better audience, and it's fun. And there's so much about to go on because the Olympics start in less than 2 weeks. There's a lot of fun sports happening here in the next several weeks.
Absolutely. It feels like we're finally getting back into the season of sports because for a while it's pretty dry there. But like you said, the Vols, they're just moving so fast through the ranks too. And doing a full draft recap, Christian Moore, number 8 to the Angels, Blake Burke to the Brewers, Billy Amick to the Twins, Dylan Dreiling to the Rangers, Drew Beam to the Royals, AJ Causey also to the Royals, Tavares Tears to the Padres, and Aaron Combs to the White Sox. And then Xander Seacrest to the Twins. So that's a lot in one draft. Pretty surreal to see that many Vols go in the draft, especially because the MLB draft, a lot of those players are high schoolers that organizations are taking risks on. So to see them decide that their pick is worth using on a Vol, that is massive. But speaking of former Vol, Garrett Crochet, he's a big target right now in the trade deadline talks. White Sox lefty has been pitching lights out, and this is one of his first seasons where he's tossed over 100 innings. So a little bit of a risk there. He did have a big injury 2 years back, but a lot of teams in need of starting pitching right now. MLB insider Ken Rosenthal has said that the Orioles, the Red Sox, the Guardians, Astros, Brewers, Dodgers, and Padres are all sorely hurting for pitching, especially the Dodgers. I will add, just because that's my baseball team. Right now, with the Dodgers starting pitching, Glasnow, Yamamoto, Kershaw, Buehler, Sheehan, May, Gonsolin, all currently on the injury list, all starting pitchers. Like we have, I don't even know who's out there right now for us, to be perfectly honest. So lots of talk in the trade deadline. What are your thoughts on maybe who goes where, who ends up doing what, and if the White Sox truly are willing to move on from Crochet?
I think it's really tough because he is your franchise guy, but also you see it happen year after year where sometimes if you ship off one guy, you can get other guys and prospects, draft picks, etc. along with it. I know the Cincinnati Reds had their ace, Louis Castillo, and he was the guy in Cincinnati, but the Reds were at the bottom of the division. And they ship him off for several prospects, couple picks, and he immediately jumps into the starting lineup for the Seattle Mariners, is pretty much their best arm. And now the Reds have some of the best prospects and rookies, second-year guys in the league. And so sometimes it pays dividends. So in my opinion, I think shopping Crochet is a very good idea for the Chicago White Sox because they're not in win now mode. And I think if you have to rebuild a roster, sometimes parting ways with your very best guy might seem crazy, but in baseball, it's all about building up the organization in the assets that you have. And sometimes taking a risk on some highly touted prospects can build your roster. It's not like basketball where the roster is 15. It's not even like football where you can kind of see it out of guys on the 53-man roster. Baseball is about taking risks and finding guys. We saw guys last night that were drafted in the 19th round in the All-Star game because they panned out to be really good baseball players. So I'm interested to see what happens. And if I'm the White Sox, I'm shopping Crochet to one of those teams that might need starting pitching that is not going to be in your division or where you won't see him specifically weekend after weekend.
I'm absolutely in agreement. I think that the White Sox have no choice but to shop Crochet right now, especially because there are so many teams that are sorely hurting for starting pitching right now. It's the seller's market in a big way. And like you said, building a team in baseball is just, it's a lot harder. And it's a lot more difficult. And it's a lot more about organizational depth, because you have to keep in mind too, that these teams are trading players in the minor leagues. They're trading to build their minor league rosters up a little bit, just getting guys to come through the organization that will benefit the team. And when you think about a starting pitcher, he may be your ace, he may be your number one guy, but he's playing maybe one in every 5 games, especially with how the modern MLB works. So that's that on a great pitcher, probably like 75% chance to win that game with their start. And that's like the best of the best. And that's just one out of every 4 to 5 games. So in baseball, you have to build big. It's such a unique sport in that way. But other guys are being shopped around too. Tigers potentially moving on. Talks have gotten bigger and bigger each day. From the 27-year-old lefty phenom, Tarek Skubal. Breakout year for the kid. Leads the AL Cy Young conversation. He's got 2 years left of team control on the contract, and it's the Dodgers and the O's in the hunt for him right now. Really interesting trade battle that's probably going to end up happening. I don't know if the Tigers are going to be willing to move on from him, but like we've talked about, it's such a good seller's market right now that he's going to leave Detroit at the end of his contract anyways. It's how it works. I don't think that Detroit's going to be able to really hold on to anyone unless they're a hometown kid, just with the state that franchise is in. So they've really got to look to move on from him. And they got a huge opportunity with the O's having the number one farm system in the entire league right now. They could clear a lot of talent.
Yeah, with the Orioles in contention, I think it's a worthy opportunity for the Detroit Tigers. But with 2 years of team control, I just see it as an opportunity. Do you roll the dice and do you get even more this time next year? So I don't know, because he is in Cy Young contention. If he does close out the year in a big way, wins the Cy Young, that could look really good for your franchise. You could be a little bit more of an attractive destination, even though it is tough for the Detroit Tigers. But I don't know. I just think I go back and forth with, when you still have 2 years in team control, do you take the risk and shop next year or in the offseason when you could get even more prospects? Or do the Baltimore Orioles, are they willing to give up more from that number one farm league system? I think it just depends on the other side of the deal, because if I'm Detroit, I am not budging unless you are getting guys who could be everyday guys for your roster. And I would expect multiple everyday guys in return for your ace.
I think they just might get it though. The O's, however, they might hold on to their pieces as tight as they can. Different story though from the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers are going to be willing to roll the dice a lot more and trade a lot more away. They don't have the same farm system, but the Dodgers currently rank 8th with their farm system, so they got guys to give. And if there's a team that's going to trade to win now, it is the Dodgers. They have gambled everything. They've spent everything they can, which I know people will hate on my beautiful Dodgers for doing so, but then they'll turn around to their own franchises whose owners won't spend money and be mad at them. So, hey, just because I'm living it up doesn't mean you got to be jealous. But I do think the Dodgers will trade some of their most important pieces, and they've done this in the past too, trading guys like Verdugo, who seemingly were going to be the next big things, letting guys go like Corey Seager. And it's interesting. They play so well as prospects for the Dodgers, and then they get shipped to their new destination. It's never quite the same. I don't know what to make of it, but we seem to pull off some fleeces. So I don't know if the Tigers will be willing to engage with us, but I can certainly hope to see Skubal and Dodger Blue.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I just think that, to circle back, there's so much that can go on in this period before the trade deadline. And it's so interesting that the draft happens at the exact same time, because other guys can be shipped off that just got drafted. And so I think that happened maybe with Drew Gilbert a couple of years ago, former Vol. So I'm interested to see if all the Tennessee players stay where they're at, where they got drafted, because a lot of the Tennessee players, some of them got drafted together. It's really interesting where Drew Beam, AJ Causey, they're going to team up with Jared Dickey, who's also in the Royals organization. There's so many Tennessee Vols in the MLB that they're ending up on the same teams and organizations. And Chase Dollander and Jordan Beck in Colorado are, another example of that. So that's really exciting. I think that there's a lot of moving pieces this time of year in the MLB as far as building your roster is concerned. And I think we'll just have to wait and see how it goes, because there's so many options across the country on how teams can either improve, buy, sell. Doesn't really matter, but there's so many different options with the draft and the trade deadline right around the same time.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you can say all those players that are playing together, and that's still not even all the Vols that are playing together, because Billy Amick and Xander Seacrest now playing together in Minnesota. And then Aaron Combs is in Chicago on the south side, going to be with Crochet. So, I mean, there's so many teams with multiple Vols in the MLB. It's genuinely insane. I don't think that we've ever really seen anything like this, at least not around here. But with that, going to cut it to a break. We got some soccer news on the other side to talk with some major international tournaments wrapping up. You're listening to Volunteer Radio 90.3 The Rock.
Stay tuned.
Volunteer Radio receives support from Tennessee Smokies Baseball, AA-7 League affiliate of the Chicago Cubs, whose 2024 regular season schedule features 6-game homestands, Tuesday through Sundays, now into September at Smoky Stadium in Kodak. WTK's Rock Solid Sports will have weekly Smokies updates. TheSmokiesBaseball.com and at weeklies at WTKRadio.com.
The Rock thanks Fieldhouse Social, the Wednesday home for Rock Solid Sports, for their support. American craft food, beer, and cocktails, plus a 25-foot big screen at University Commons Way. Fieldhouse Social welcomes sports fans and others alike to enjoy dishes like citrus-marinated chicken, grilled Faroe Island salmon, and smoked ribs. FieldhouseSocial.com or on Twitter and Facebook.
Volunteer Radio thanks Blank Newspaper for their support and media partnership. Blank Newspaper is a local independent publication filling readers in on sports, entertainment, and local interest stories, available at over 300 locations in Knox and adjacent counties. Blank's 2024 Knoxville's Finest issue is online and on the streets, revealing the best of the best in K-Town, including the finest bands, bars, restaurants, and more. BlankNews.com or inside the new issue.
Tim Farris from NXS. You're listening to WTK.
The Rock thanks Union Jack's English Club, 154 South North Shore Drive, for their support. Union Jack's offers karaoke brunch Sundays, Singo Tuesdays, live trivia each Thursday, as well as pool tables, blues ball, darts, and more entertainment options, including the newly expanded
I'm gonna kill him.
Menu and more
I'm gonna
info
kill
is
him.
at UJ.
We're getting school. You hear me?
Union Jack's English Club social media.
Not officially yet, but soon.
90.3 The Rock thanks UT Athletic Department for their support. The 2024 football Vols will play home games inside Neyland Stadium against SEC rivals Florida, Alabama, Kentucky, and others. AllVols.com for info with a link at WTKRadio.com. UT student ticket info is at bigorangetickets.utk.edu. 90.3 The Rock says, go Vols.
La-di-da-di-dee. It's the one and only WUTK back on the air. I'm your host, Dominic Wade Throngard of Boise, Idaho, joining you from the studio in the basement of Andy Holt Tower. Online, we got Griffin Hadley, all the way from Indiana, making his lovely appearance tonight. Got some soccer news to talk here for Rock Solid Sports in our final segment of the evening. Argentina, they have won the Copa America in a 1-0 contest against Colombia that took place in Miami. But overshadowing Messi's latest international trophy, scenes at this game, pure disaster. Hard Rock Stadium got ransacked with escalators and ducts getting broken as many fans bypassed security and entered the match without a ticket as capacity exceeded the stadium's limits. Many fans remarked that they felt unsafe, and many fans have been vocal about the U.S. not being ready to host a World Cup. Lots of talk about who to blame going on this one. Who do you think is at fault here?
I'm almost at a loss for words when I was able to see the scenes from Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. It was unbelievable. Like, I had never seen anything like this at a sporting event, at an NFL stadium or a multi-purpose stadium or arena. It was just kind of crazy to see and to take in. Just fans climbing up the stairs and the ramps of the stadium to get in, climbing through the ducts of the stadium to get in. It, like ambush or running through security and fencing and all sorts of things. The match had to start over an hour after the game was supposed to start. And all of these things, I don't really know who is to blame, I think it's a learning experience for the United States heading into the World Cup, knowing that international fans, international soccer fans at that, are just different. It's just going to be a different beast. And I think it'll be a wake-up call that the security is going to have to be different at the World Cup. It's going to have to be, I don't want to say more extreme, but more precautionary. And I just think heading into the World Cup, I don't know who is to blame for the Copa America final, but I know that Hard Rock Stadium wasn't ready for the crowd. And I don't really know if they could have been, but I do think this is a learning experience, and you best be ready for the World Cup after the fact that this was pretty wild, seeing that the whole scenes of the match overshadowed the match itself.
On a certain level, I have to honestly say I respect the fans' dedication, because it's pretty insane. Like, just their willingness to come all the way from Colombia, because a lot of them were Colombian fans. I saw a lot of yellow in that crowd, a lot of Argentinian fans too. But coming from Colombia and Argentina and just doing anything you can to see your team potentially lift a trophy, I kind of respect it. Nonetheless, many of those who are familiar with how these tournaments work, and specifically in the U.S. soccer fans who are familiar with the CONMEBOL organization that oversees the Copa America, it's your standard fare, corrupt, not very well-to-do soccer organization. It's based out of South America, and a lot of people are saying that they're the ones to blame, and I'm inclined to believe that is the case, because they are in charge of security for these matches, and effectively they were renting out these stadiums. And the agreement was they would have these stadiums in the U.S., but the teams in North America had to be allowed to play in the tournament, and that's been the case for these past couple of Copa Americas. But yeah, just real incompetency on CONMEBOL's part. Not necessarily shocked about it, but yeah, crazy scenes at the stadium. I think we'll be just fine for the World Cup, because I've seen countless college football games with more people than have ever attended a soccer match at the same time. I mean, the record attendance for a soccer match, I believe, was set in the 50s for the World Cup in Brazil at the Maracanã, which it was way over capacity. This is a random historical note, but I think it was in the 100,000s, but I think it's comparable to about how much show up for college football games, and like the record attendances for college football games. So the U.S. is capable of handling these amounts of people. I think we'll be fine for the World Cup, but it is definitely a reminder that soccer fans, they do have an extreme level of passion that's not to be ignored, and they're as rabid as the most rabid of college football fans, no doubt. In regards to the game, though, this is an incredible win for Messi and his team. He was injured in this one, had to be subbed off in the early goings of the match. Team still goes out and wins it, and adds to his legacy, a legacy that was completely devoid of international trophies, I believe just a mere short 4 years ago, which is insane to think about, that in Messi's late age, he's been able to get these international accolades that have evaded him for most of his career and have been the subject of the GOAT conversation. And he keeps improving his case. Do you think that Messi truly can state his claim as the GOAT now?
I think he can, and obviously he didn't have a huge part in this championship match, but he did have a big part in getting there. And he has a big part in leading this team. And for a guy who really struggled to lead his team to international victories in championship matches or semifinal matches on this stage, Argentina is kind of on a dynastic run here, winning Copa America, World Cup, Copa America. It's the likes of a dynasty for Argentina as far as South American soccer teams go, because that doesn't happen. You don't win 3 major tournaments in a row that are spread 4 years apart, and in this case 2-2 and 2. So it's very interesting just to think about it's interesting to think about the weight of these championships as far as Messi's career goes, because obviously when he's played for his professional teams, he has cleaned up when he was at Barcelona and all those different things. And he's played so much high quality soccer, but I think he's definitely has an argument now for the GOAT conversation. I love watching him. I think the footwork and the touch he has on the ball, he just passes the eye test for me, as far as I am a huge fan of watching soccer when these guys are playing for their nations, because they're, like you said about the fans, there's so much passion involved. I'm not a huge fan of the professional team soccer. I don't really dive into some of the different leagues as much, but I am a fan of soccer when it comes on and these guys are representing their country, because I think there's a different level of passion. And I think we saw that from Lionel Messi. We saw it from Di Maria. We saw it from Martinez. We see it from these different guys, and they wear it on their back. They wear it on the front of their jersey. There's a whole lot of passion. And I think you saw it from Messi when the game ended. You saw it when he got hurt, how upset he was. And I think with that passion, with his ability to lead his team to 3 straight titles in major international competitions, I think it cements himself as one of, if not the best soccer player of all time.
I think at this point in time, I think you kind of have to say Messi is indeed the GOAT. Just no one else can truly compare to his achievements, especially considering this is the modern era. Just incredible run, and the international trophies is what seals it for me. I've been a Ronaldo fan all my life, and I still like Ronaldo better than I like Messi. However, Messi, I don't think you can say that there's any more skilled a soccer player in the entire world ever. He's easily the most skilled to have ever played the game. Just like you said, passes the eye test and has a level of control over the ball that you can't really understand unless you watch him. And even when you watch him, it doesn't make any sense. He's just all over the pitch with the ball just seemingly stuck to his foot, making everyone look silly around him. Some of the world's best. And like you said, the passion that's there in these international tournaments is phenomenal, especially with regional rivals. But flipping it to the other side of the globe, Euro just wrapped up as well. Spain beat England in the final 2-1 with goals from Nico Williams and Mikel Oyarzabal. Truly phenomenal Euro for Spain. Just looked good throughout the tournament, walked their way into the final, and simply looked the better team at the end of the match. I really don't think there was another team that was as good as Spain in this contest. And then just that youngster, the 16-year-old, blanking his name, forgive me, but he's been incredible to watch, just a true force. And if you haven't seen his dad, closest thing to LeVar Ball they have in soccer right now, telling everyone that because his son in the hospital when he was born met Messi, and he said, maybe Messi was the lucky one and my son gave him the gift. But just That's truly insane. A very fun Euro to watch. And England's manager, Gareth Southgate, resigned after the loss, to the joy of many fans. Very similar campaign to Greg Berhalter. How do you feel about this whole tournament?
Yeah, I was just talking to one of my buddies about the Southgate incident or resignation, because it reminded me so much of Greg Berhalter and Team USA. But I think as a whole, the Euros was really fun. And I agree with you, Dom. I think it extends more than just the final match. I think Spain was just the best team in this entire tournament, because they had to play some really, really impressive teams, and they were able to get through all of them. And I think one that jumps out is the fact that they beat France. And I think that's no easy task, because we talk about international success. We talked about it with Copa America. We talked about it with Argentina. France has been pretty successful in the last several years. And the fact that Spain was able to get through a number of different opponents and be the best team, and then get through England and be the best team in the championship match, I think it just cements Spain as one of the international powerhouses in this sport. And they're always fun to watch. They're always well coached. And I think that Spain showcased that England had holes that Spain was able to take advantage of. And they were the best team in that championship match. And even though England did play well at times, Spain played better throughout the entire match. And I think that's why they sealed the deal. I think that's what we saw from Argentina in Copa America. Colombia wasn't able to take advantage of great opportunities, and because of that, they ended up losing in extra time. In the Euro Championship, I think that England did have opportunities. They could have won that match, but Spain was not going to let that happen. And I think that England now has a big, kind of in between section here. And now that I think England can kind of convert and think about where they want to move in the different direction for, leading into the World Cup.
Absolutely. And forgive me for that huge boom there with the sound effects. But Lamine Yamal, that was the youngster I wanted to shout out. 17 years old. If you want to feel old, kid was born in 2007. Just, yeah, that'll do it, though, for Rock Solid Sports Wednesday night edition. The alternative hour up next with my boy Seth hosting. Make sure to stay tuned. Don't turn that dial. Thanks for listening.
Super excited. Where's Elisa's at?